Luke 1, verse 57 to 80, the birth of John the Baptist. When it was time for Elizabeth to have her baby, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown her great mercy, and they shared her joy. On the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after his father Zechariah. But his mother spoke up and said, "No, he is to be called John." They said to her, "There is no one among your relatives who has that name." Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, "His name is John." Immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. All the neighbors were filled with awe, and throughout the hill country of Judea, people were talking about all these things. Everyone who heard this wondered about it, asking, "What then is the child going to be?" For the Lord's hand was with him. Zechariah's Song. His father Zechariah was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of the servant Jacob, as he said through his holy prophets long ago, salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy to our ancestors and to redeem his holy covenant. The oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, my child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our Lord, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace." And the child grew and became strong in the spirit, and he lived in the wilderness until he appeared publicly to Israel. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So there's a popular saying that I'm sure you've heard that goes a little bit like this: you can't teach an old dog new tricks. This is an old proverb. It's often used to mean that older people or older dogs can't learn anything new. They suggest that the best time for learning is when we are young, and that as we get older, the learning gets harder and we become more set in our ways. Now, researchers from the University of Veterinary Medicine in Vienna decided to test this proverb and to see if it's true. And what they found was this: an older dog will quickly lose the interest in an object, much more quickly than what a younger dog will. But if there's human involvement, if there's a person that's holding this object, that the older dog can maintain as much interest and is just as willing to learn as the younger dog. It just takes more time and more involvement on behalf of people. And so it is that at least with dogs, that you can in fact teach an old dog new tricks. People, on the other hand, well, we're not so sure yet. In our text for this morning, Zechariah is this old dog. When we first looked at Zechariah a few weeks ago, we found him in the temple preparing an offering of incense to go up with the people's morning prayer. As Zechariah prepared the offering, the angel Gabriel appeared to him and told him that his prayer had been answered, and that he and Elizabeth would have a son. The son would be a joy and a delight to them, and many people would rejoice because of his birth. Only Zechariah has difficulty believing. He and Elizabeth are both old, he says, and she is beyond the years of childbearing. They have long since given up praying for a child. Now, because he doesn't believe, and as a sign that what the angel has said will come true, Zechariah is told that he'll not be able to speak until all that he has heard will come true. And so Zechariah completes his priestly duties, and he returns home, and then he spends the next 9 months in silence, unable to talk, unable even to hear the voices of others as they speak to him. Now much happens during this time. His wife Elizabeth conceives. She becomes pregnant. She spends the first 5 months of her pregnancy hiding what has happened. She stays indoors, and the neighbors start to wonder what's going on. They begin to talk and to murmur amongst each other. Then Elizabeth's young cousin Mary comes to visit. And as soon as Mary crosses the threshold and steps into her house, Elizabeth is filled with the Holy Spirit, and she proclaims Mary to be the mother of the Lord. Mary stays with Elizabeth and Zechariah for 3 months, from the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy to the time that the child is to be born. Now finally that time comes, the time that Elizabeth is to have her baby, and still Zechariah remains silent. He is the old dog, needing to learn a new trick. Now sometimes we can be that old dog too. The older we get, it seems the harder it is to change. We get set in our ways, and we like things to stay the way that they are. At home, the TV remote needs to sit in a certain place when we're not watching TV. And the dishes need to go a certain way in the cupboard. And if the car keys don't get hung up on the right hook, it seems that we can lose hours looking for them, even if they're sitting on the counter only a few feet away. At work, we have our routines, ways that we like things to be done. We spend countless hours retraining the new guy, teaching him how to do things our way, the right way, and not how he learned it on the farm next door or in his previous job. Back when I worked construction, I worked for a framer whose favorite question was, why did you do it that way? What I learned over time was that with his experience, he often had a better way of doing things. But he was willing and ready to learn from me as I explained things from my perspective. An answer he would never want to hear, and an answer that he would never give if I asked him why he did something in a certain way, was because I've always done it that way. You see, he was always ready to learn, and always ready to teach others as well. There's temptation to do things the way that we have always done it. There's comfort in routine. And we like knowing what to expect. And so we bolt the pews to the floor so that we don't show up on Sunday mornings, to find them pushed to the walls so that we can worship together in a circle and celebrate the Lord's Supper facing each other. We pick which committees to be part of, which ministries that we can help with, ones that we're comfortable with, ones that don't stretch us too much. We ask not to help in Sunday school or in nursery. We refuse to allow our names to stand for council nomination. We find ways to make ourselves busy with what's easy so that we don't have to do the harder thing, the thing that will stretch us and cause us to grow. Like Zechariah, we get comfortable with the way things are. We go about our routines hoping, expecting that things will stay just the way that they are. Zechariah was standing inside the temple. He was in the holy place where only the priests would go. He was near the entrance to the most holy place, the part of the temple that was believed to hold the footstool of God, the place that represented the very presence of God among his people. And as Zechariah was there, the last thing that he expected was to hear from God, or to have one of God's messengers show up and bring him good news. Fortunately, God doesn't typically act in the ways that we expect that he will. As we heard in the children's story, in the middle of a sermon, in the middle of reading God's law, as the people became more and more upset about how they have failed to live up to God's expectations, God causes his prophets, the ones whose names mean help is here, and God wipes away our tears. He causes these two men to stop and to throw a week-long party. He leads his people to look back and to celebrate God's promises and the many wonderful things he has done for them since the time of Abraham and even before that. He reminds them, and he reminds us, of his never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. Already then, as the Israelites were returning from captivity to the promised land, the Lord reveals to them his rescue plan. In this children's story, God's message for his people is this: I can't stop loving you. You are my heart's treasure. But I lost you, and now I'm coming back for you. I'm like the sun that gently shines on you, chasing away darkness, fear, and death. You'll be so happy, you'll be like little calves running free in an open field. I'm going to send my messenger, the promised one, the one you have been waiting for, the rescuer. In Malachi 4, we read, the Lord Almighty promises that those who revere the Lord's name, the Son of Righteousness will rise up with healing in its rays. So for Zechariah, after 9 months of silence, after 9 months of neither being able to speak to those around him, nor hear from them, he holds his baby in his arms, his new baby boy, and he testifies that what the angel has said is true. He begins to feel the warmth of the sun, and he begins to experience its healing. Through a motion of series of signals and motions, the people around there ask Zechariah what the name of his child is to be. And he writes out on a wooden tablet covered in wax, his name is John. Immediately, Zechariah's tongue is unlocked. His ears are set free, and he breaks out into song, praising God and prophesying to the people who are there with him. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel. He has come to them, he has visited them, and he has redeemed his people. Now there's an intimacy in this, in God's coming to his people, or in visiting them, as other translations will offer. You see, when Mary went to visit her cousin Elizabeth, she stayed for 3 months. And our Lord, the God of Israel, came through his son Jesus, and he walked among us. And like we saw in Mary's song last week, in Zechariah's song, he sings in the past tense about something that for him is to come in the future. Because he too, at this point, believes that it is a sure thing. He knows that what he sings about will come true. Just as he knows that the child he is holding is the voice of the one calling, in the wilderness prepare the way for the Lord. In this same way, he knows that the horn of salvation, raised up from the house of David, is the Lord his God. Zechariah ends his song with these words, and you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High. For you will go on before the Lord to prepare a way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the path of peace. Parents, can you imagine taking your newborn child in your arms, looking down at their sleeping, still wrinkled up faces, and calling them prophets of the Most High? Can you imagine telling your child that he or she will be the one that would go before the Lord to prepare the way for him? You see, John was filled with the Holy Spirit even before birth. He jumped inside Elizabeth's womb at the sound of Mary's voice. John's was a special calling, and one that had not been given to any other prophet or servant of God up till that time. He was to prepare the way for the Lord. John was to be like the prophet Elijah, teaching people the error of their ways, preaching repentance and the forgiveness of sins. In his lifetime, John would be the one who would baptize Jesus, the Son of God. He would witness the Spirit descending on Jesus like a dove, and would hear the voice of God from heaven, saying, "This is my Son whom I love. With him I am well pleased." John had such a strong following that the Pharisees and the teachers of the law refused to rebuke him for fear of the crowds. Even Herod was afraid of John, but he is also intrigued. He would call John before him, and he would listen to him preach, even after John condemned his marriage to Herodias. But as Zacharias sings, John is still a baby, an infant in his father's arms, hearing the song, but not yet able to make out these words. Zechariah and Elizabeth had prayed for a child, but they had received so much more. Their son would hold a special place in redemptive history, a special place in God's rescue plan. And as John's parents, they would be the ones who would help him to live out this call. And this is where we come in. At the end of his gospel, Matthew shares Jesus' last words before he ascends into heaven. Jesus says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, even to the very end of the age." John's call was to preach and to baptize the forgiveness of sins and to prepare Israel for the Messiah's first coming. Jesus commissions us, he tells us, to go and to preach and to baptize and to prepare others for that day when he will return again as High King over heaven and earth. And in this sense, we have the same calling that John the Baptist had. These aren't just jobs for a pastor, not just things that we do in church. They are for each and every one of us to live out in our whole lives. And like Zachariah and Elizabeth, we have the responsibility to raise up the next generations to live out this call as well. Zechariah ends his song with a metaphor of a journey. Jesus is the rising sun, the light of the world that will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the path of righteousness. In his own life, Zechariah was on a journey. As a priest, he loved and he served the Lord. But in his later days, as he became a father in his old age, God taught him something new about what it meant to love and serve the Lord. Brothers and sisters, you and I are on a journey as well. And each step that we take is an opportunity for God to reveal to us how much he loves us and how he desires for us to live out the call to serve him. And at times he calls us to take steps to humble ourselves and to take on roles of service so that he can continue to teach us his way. In his later years, author and scholar Henry Nouwen left a prestigious position at Harvard University to live and to work at a home for individuals with intellectual disabilities, people who are unable to support themselves or to live on their own. And he writes this about his late career change. "My movement from Harvard to L'Arche made me aware of a new way, made me aware in a new way how much my own thinking about Christian leadership had been affected by the desire to be relevant, the desire for popularity, and the desire for power. Too often I looked at being relevant, popular, and powerful as ingredients to an effective ministry. The truth, however, is that these are not vocations but temptations. Jesus asks, 'Do you love me?' Jesus sends us out to be shepherds, and Jesus promises a life in which we increasingly have to stretch out our hands and be led to places that we would rather not go. He asks us to move from a concern for relevance to a life of prayer, from worries about popularity to communal and mutual ministry, and from leadership based on power to leadership in which we critically discern where God is leading us and our people." You see, now I recognize that he'd been trying to direct the journey that he was on, rather than to allow the Lord to lead him and to teach him. I would dare say that Nouwen would claim he learned more in his last years living with friends with intellectual disabilities than he did throughout his entire career at Harvard. carver and as a Bible scholar. He was that old dog that learned a few more tricks. I've often said that I've learned the most about God and his love for me as I've watched my own children start to grow up. The way that a child is so free with their love, so ready to forgive, but also in watching my children learn and grow and as they make mistakes along the way. You see, what we can learn about God from children can extend beyond our own kids. I've learned that there are many wise parents in this congregation, and they've already done a great job in sharing that wisdom with their own children. So I want to encourage you this morning. If you're not already involved in a ministry that puts you in the same room, at the same table as their younger members, that you would consider doing it. Because it's not about putting in your time, it's not about simply doing your duty. It's about humbling yourself. And it's about allowing the light of Christ to light up your path and to use you to bring his light to others. Now maybe children's ministry is not for you, and that's okay, it's not for everyone. But if this is the case, then I want to finish this morning with another question for you. I want you to ask yourselves, where is Jesus trying to lead you in your life? And what surprising ways might he be trying to teach you about his love to you? Take time this week to consider that. Make that your prayer. Say, Lord Jesus, lead me. Surprise me with your grace and with your love. And open my eyes to the way that you are at work in my life. Amen. Let's pray.